And we're live on Facebook as well. Welcome everyone, and welcome to our friends on Zoom as well, and our YouTube viewers. Today's discussion is an important one, and it's a long time in building. And the topic today, my dear friends, is the relationship you're in, or many of you maybe were in. Is it love or is it obsession? And there is a distinction. And we're going to see today, God willing, that love relationships can come in many forms and varieties. And we want our relationships to be healthy and serene and calming and soothing and productive for ourselves and our partners as well, although we can't control others. That's what we all want from our loving relationships, no matter what that relationship is. However, I have seen from my many years of counseling and working with couples, pre-marriage and even after marriage, and even young people, as we're going to see, because this disease of obsession goes back to childhood, we're going to see, has three very distinctive signs that you can look into your relationships to know whether it's a healthy and growing, healthy growth-based relationship, or if the relationship you're in is an unhealthy, obsessive one, which brings with it a lot of pain and challenge. So that's going to be our discussion today. We're going to be mostly today be speaking about what an obsessive relationship looks like. And along the way, we'll try to infer what a healthy and nurturing, productive relationship looks like as well. So what do we mean when we say obsession or obsessive? So in a relationship, obsession is when a person is dependent on, enmeshed with, or compulsively focused on taking care of another person. And the key word over there, you may have missed it, but it's used a lot, and I use a lot, is enmeshment. In other words, a healthy relationship is I know who I am, I know where I end and where you begin. So we're two independent people who have come together to create a bonding, a friendship, a marriage, an employer-employee relationship. That's good. That's what we're looking for in a good, healthy relationship. However, many relationships start off or deteriorate into an obsessive relationship where we're not two separate, distinct individuals, but these two people come enmeshed into each other, and there is a lack or a blurring of boundaries. So why do people have obsession? I'm assuming everyone in a relationship wants to be in a relationship because they want to have a loving, nurturing relationship with another person, whether it's a family member or a spouse or a boyfriend or an employee or a friendship, whatever it is. However, many of these relationships become or even start as obsessive. And from my understanding, it seems that the internal pain of the failure of a relationship with yourself, it stems from yourself, not from the other person. The obsession doesn't start with them, it starts with you. And blaming all your failures on other people, the person turns to a certain type of close relationship, thinking falsely that this relationship is going to break the internal pain, fill that vacuum inside me, and I'm going to get unconditional love and attention, and I'm going to be able to take care of them so that this internal pain, which I have usually from childhood, is now going to be fixed. And if that's where the love is coming from, it's not love, it's actually obsession, and it's an obsessive relationship. So obsession comes from unhealed pain from childhood. They basically had a caregiver, a parent, a family member, a teacher that didn't give them the correct or the right amount of love, and that ended up with this person lacking this healthy love and attention that they needed as a childhood, okay? And it left them in a state of being or feeling abandoned, okay? And this goes with them from childhood into their adulthood. When I say adulthood, I mean could be in your teen years, 20s, 30s, 40s. I see people in their 40s and 50s who are still suffering from this abandonment or apparent abandonment from their childhood that they now need to fill up in adulthood. So all these people have one thing in common. They are seeking out the person. They're seeking out the person who they think is going to fill this gaping emptiness, which resulted from their childhood that they didn't get the enough love and nurturing from their caregiver. So that's a problem when you're a child. But when you get older, it becomes a lot more complex and difficult to deal with, especially when they start to bring another person into their life in order to fill that role. And they'll find a lover, a parent, a friend, their own children. People get obsessed with their own children, a counselor, or even a rabbi, where the relationship becomes what we call unhealthy. But what we mean when we say relationship is unhealthy is it's obsessive. And you use this relationship to fix a problem which is in yourself, which this other person just cannot fill. They're never going to be able to fill the emptiness that's inside them. And where does this come from? Why do people think that this relationship, right, whatever it is, friend, child, parent, counselor, rabbi, whatever it is, what makes people think that this person can fix my problems? Because it's not true. It doesn't work. It's unhealthy and it's unproductive. So that's a very good question. And I have my own thoughts on that. And I like to call it what's called the Prince Charming syndrome. You see, the Prince Charming syndrome is when you have this sleeping beauty, which we all are to some degree, who's half comatose, lying on a slab, half out of it. And then he turns up, right? Or she turns up, this knight in shining armor on his white steed, and he's handsome with his hair and the dimple in his chin you could sharpen a pencil in, and off he comes, and he jumps off his horse, and he leans over, and he gives you the kiss. And this one kiss, this image that we all get from our childhood, which is a terrible, terrible image to have in our minds, is that this person, through that one kiss, which a kiss is one thing, but as you get older, it becomes a lot more complex, as it turns into, physical intimacy, is gonna solve all my problems. And in the cartoons and the movies, it kind of looks good. But in real life, it's a recipe for tragedy. Thinking that this person, by giving me that kiss, is gonna fix all of my problems. And it could be an employer, it could be a friend. By the way, when we talk about obsession, this person doesn't even need to be known to you. It could be a person who you've seen on television or saw in a movie, right? People become obsessed and put posters up on the walls of complete strangers or celebrities, right? And that person kind of gives us a nice, warm, fuzzy, it makes us feel whole, right? And that's one of the dangers of this Prince Charming syndrome. Well, first of all, it's very offensive, right? That there's the woman and, her problems are going to be solved by this person giving her a kiss. Okay, which, by the way, in many states is probably statutory rape because she's unconscious. But we'll leave that aside, right, for another discussion, not for now. But thinking that physical intimacy is going to solve my problems, and this person's going to come out of the blue and fix everything for me because they are my Prince Charming. Right? This is the problem, and that's the source, I believe, of the idea that this obsessive relationship and this person's going to come and fix my problems, which never actually happens. Okay, it doesn't work. And the obsession with this person and thinking they're going to fix me through their presence and their actions is unrealistic and in many cases unfair. Okay, so I'm going to give you now the 3 characteristics of an obsessive relationship. How do you know if you are in a obsessive, i.e. unhealthy relationship? Okay, because it's worth identifying. Because again, many people are in obsessive, unhealthy relationships and think they're in a very loving relationship and the problem's with her or him, right? My employee, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, wife, and right, they'll ascribe, we'll see too much attention and too much on that person that has led me to be in this relationship. So the obsessive relationship has 3 characteristics. Number 1, assigning too much time and too much value to a partner, okay? And what happens is the person, I've seen through my counseling so many times, the person assigns a disproportionate amount of time, attention, and value of themselves to the person they're obsessed with. They're always talking about them, they're always thinking about them, and they're never free of this person. This person, as I like to say, well, I've said it many times, is living in your head rent-free. Right? They're constantly there. You're constantly talking about them. But the person will think about them, want to be with them, talk to them, listen to them, and want to be cared for and treasured by them. Because once again, this person of their obsession, whether they know them or not, they could be a stranger, right? But usually it's a person you're in a relationship with. You ascribe too much, a way disproportionate amount of attention and time to, thinking that the more I do, the more and better my life is going to be. But actually, the opposite is true. The more they're in your life, the worse your relationships become. This always leads to eventual disappointment, as the obsessed person tries harder and harder to manipulate the other person to live up to the mental image they've created. Because they have this childhood image, and when I say childhood, I mean usually from childhood, but also very immature, that this person is going to come in, marry me, or make me their employer or employee, or my child, whatever it is. We obsess over many things, and they are going to fill that Prince Charming, which I always had in my mind, who's going to come and sweep me off my feet, give me that one kiss, and everything's going to be perfect. Okay? But it's not true. Okay? That person doesn't exist. No one can, and it's unfair to think that any other person can fill up that void that exists inside us from our childhood. No one can do it. No one can fill in the role, right? And they're waiting for their mummy to come and fix it all. And this leads, my friends, and I've seen it so many times, to repeated disappointments. This unhealthy, childish behavior of ascribing too much time and attention and obsession with that other person always leads to disappointment, because no human is able to satisfy these insatiable desires of that piece that is missing inside you from that caregiver who didn't give you what you think, or maybe what was actually needed. Okay, so that's number one. If you see you're assigning way too much time and way too much value to your partner, that's not love, that's obsession. Number 2 of 3 is unrealistic expectations for unconditional positive love. And this is that the person has unrealistic expectations for unconditional positive regard from their partner. They always need affirmation. They always need encouragement. They can't just have you do your thing and I do my thing. And how you, the person constantly needs them to say how much they love them and how much they need them and how important they are. Listen, we all need to be told, I love you and you're fantastic. Right? And that's normal and that's healthy and that's understandable. We all need some form of affirmation in our lives and our relationships. But it becomes obsessive at some point, and they expect unconditional positive regards all the time. And they didn't call me in 5 minutes. And where are they? And why are they thinking about me? And are they thinking about me? And what are they doing about me? And you'll be in conversations with these people, and they won't stop talking about that other person, because that person isn't just a human. They've become almost like a god, small g, who's going to fix all of my problems. And therefore, they better be thinking about me, and they better call me, and they better be available to me 24/7. Because if they're not, there's a problem in our relationship. They have serious doubts about their own self-worth. And such a person looks to build a relationship, right, with, this is ironic, okay? And I've seen this many times before, with a relationship avoider, okay? There are people who, it sounds ironic, but they find relationships with people who avoid relationships, right? I know it sounds weird, but you would have thought they would find someone, but they gravitate to those people who are kind of like distant in their relationships, right? Distant in their communication. Sometimes they create that, I think, because people will pull back because there's so much coming at them. They're like, whoa, I can't fulfill what you think I'm able to give you, okay? Because you're obsessing over me. But ironically, the person who's in this relationship, the other person, the one who's being obsessed over, is invariably a relationship avoider, right? They try to avoid commitment and healthy intimacy, right? Because the fact that you were chosen for this role by this person means that you're kind of like filling in that thing. They cannot bear the thought of being alone because they stay in relationships and take care of things, and this is going to build eventually anger and resentment. Yeah, that's what this unhealthy, obsessive relationship creates, right? Now, here's the other irony that comes with it, and I've seen this a lot when I deal with these couples, and that is you have one person who is obsessing with this other individual, ascribing way too much time and way too much thought and energy to the relationship because they're thinking the more I give them, the more they're going to fix me, right? They're going to be my savior. They're going to be the person who fixes all my problems. The other person is a emotional avoider, right? Which is why they were probably chosen by this person in the first place, because there's that mystique and that intrigue that they were bringing to the relationship. However, they can't leave the relationship because they have fear of abandonment. Okay, the thought of being alone and not being with and it makes sense because they made this other person into a god, right? Their savior. So they have this tremendous fear of abandonment. So they can't just leave, right? There's other fears that come with it, being alone and financial, the other challenges. But all those things aside, there's this constant fear of abandonment. If I leave them, I'm going to be dead. And they'll talk to you that way. And if they leave me, I'm going to kill myself. Not, it's going to be difficult, but I'll get over it. I'll find someone else. That's a healthy love relationship, or, a healthy failure relationship, because sometimes relationships fail because they're not meant to be. But in obsessive relationship, there's such a fear of abandonment that they basically will stay and enjoy staying in this unhealthy relationship and cannot separate because they are so enmeshed in this unhealthy relationship because their desire to be loved, cared for, and protected is not satisfied. So the fear of being alone and abandoned, because that's what they were as a child, is worse than being in this unhealthy, angry, resentful, unhealthy marriage or job or friendship or whatever else, okay? So that's sign 2. So 9.1 was assigning too much time and value for a partner. And number 2 is unrealistic expectations and unconditional positive love, which no human is able to fulfill. God can, but man cannot. Number 3 is when you start to see the person neglecting to care for and value themselves. Okay, the person neglects to care for themselves while they're in this relationship. Okay, when they were single, they were pretty good at taking care of themselves. I mean, eating healthfully and exercising and going to the therapist or taking their meds or whatever is needed for self-care. Good food, exercise, all the things you need to do in order to take care of yourself, right? And they were taking care of their stuff. They were getting their car fixed and they were studying well. And I see this with students. I see their work. When they're in college, I see their school. I teach university, and I see their schoolwork start to deteriorate when they were actually doing very well. It's usually a sign that something is dysfunctional in their lives. You don't suddenly become stupid. It doesn't work that way, right? Obviously, there's some problem in their own personal life, some obsessive relationship that is not fulfilling their unrealistic expectations, that suddenly start to fail. And now I'll say to them, how come you were an A and now you're a B minus, And they'll usually tell me there's a problem, with their parents' divorce maybe, or their own broken relationships. It's related. So when you're in a relationship and you see yourself or your partner neglect things that they were careful to do, exercise, healthy eating, right? They'll start to, put on weight and not take care of their hair and just general personal hygiene, but also self-care, go to a therapist. The relationship is not a love relationship, but it's an obsessive one. An obsessive relationship means you're not taking care of yourself when normally you do. And I see this many times. The marriage is going well. People take care of themselves. The marriage starts to fail and they let go and they stop the therapy. Ironically, when they need it the most, they stop taking care of what they eat healthily, which is when you need it the most, right? It becomes a self-destructive cycle, right? You're stuck in this whirlwind of self-destructive behavior because you're not getting what you think you need from this other person. So I'm going to not take care of myself either because they don't love me or give me the unwarranted attention, I'm not taking care of myself. This deteriorates the relationship itself, right? Because they expect their partner to take care of them. I don't need to take care of myself because you're meant to take care of me. So it's ironic, yeah? You're not taking care of me, so I won't take care of me either because it's your job. So look at me. I'm not eating well because of you. And I'm not exercising, that's because of you. I.e., the sign of a good, healthy relationship is self-care. You know someone is doing well in a relationship if they take care of themselves. They're eating well, exercising, visiting a therapist or a rabbi, and they're in this world of self-care. When you see that deteriorating in yourself or the other person, it's not love, it's obsession. And again, obsession doesn't just mean being in a relationship. It applies to all relationships, right? It could be with a parent, children. I've seen people become obsessed with counselors and therapists. Many times you may have seen, I see it every single day on the news. It's becoming a pandemic. People getting into extreme relationships with caregivers, with teachers in schools. You may have seen this, right? It's a disease, but it's coming from this, right? We blame, the child, but it's the teacher who has not put up boundaries, who is lacking a sense of self, thinking that this child, this 15, 16, 17-year-old is going to fix my problems. Well, obviously it's illegal, right? That's without saying, but it's also disgusting. And it's coming from this lack of true love, thinking that this relationship will fix who I am. Whenever you see that happening, the source is a person's tremendous lack of self that has resulted in them looking to this person, this counselor, this therapist, right? This rabbi, right, is going to come along and fix all of my problems. A guru, right? We see this, the guru, the cult leader, right? What does the person do? Why do they give up all of their self because they think this guru is going to fix the problems which I have, this fear of abandonment that I have from my childhood, right? Because I didn't get what I needed and now they're going to fix it for me. Or it could be a movie star, right? We see these kids becoming obsessed nowadays with all these people online in these, Instagram videos or TikTok videos, whatever it is, yeah? And they're seeing it and this is the root. This is where it's coming from. So hear me well. There are two fears. And these, I can't stress this enough. There are two fears of the love obsessed. The person in the relationship who is love obsessed. And these are very big fears. Number one, they have a fear of abandonment. They were abandoned as a child, maybe by a parent or a caregiver or some kind of relationship they were in as a child. They were abandoned, they felt abandoned, right? That stays with them, and they will tolerate almost anything to avoid being abandoned. They'll be in the most abusive, and you see this, right? You see the woman, right, who's being beaten up by her boyfriend, her husband, or employer, and you're like, I don't get it. Why don't they just leave? But they can't, because this fear of abandonment is worse than being emotionally or physically abused by another person. I know it sounds absurd, but for them it's real, right? And we all have it to some degree. We all have this childhood fear of abandonment, okay? In order to counter this possibility, they create relationships of enmeshment, right? With little or no boundary, because I'm now enmeshed, there's no boundaries, which should be like this. Two individuals are working together on the same vision, the same journey, but we become this. Because if I'm like this with you and I make you into a God in my life that's going to fix my problems, right? So don't leave me, right? And I'm going to hold on to you even more so that you can never ever leave me, right? And this comes from a fear of abandonment. That's number one. So the love obsessed have this one fear, but there's another fear, and that is a true fear of intimacy. Now, I've said this before. Intimacy comes in many forms. The one that most are familiar with is physical intimacy, right? Sex is a form of intimacy, but it's also an emotional intimacy. And the love obsessed, you see that when I talk to them, they're missing something. My words bounce off them because emotional intimacy, as I say, intimacy equals inter, me, you, see. That's one of the famous, I didn't make that up. That's a very famous expression that's used in the world of recovery from unhealthy love relationships or maybe sexual relationships. into me you see, and the last thing they want is you to see inside them, because they feel as though they're terrible, and they feel as though they're nothing, and they feel as though you're going to come along and fix my problems. And if you get to know the real me, you're going to hate me and you're going to want to leave me, which isn't true, because you are good and you are great, and you don't need to put on this false thing. You need to have a healthy love relationship. You've got to let that other person in. And I know people who go through months of dating and relationships and years of marriage. I mean, I have people, right, just this week, someone wrote to me from another country and said they've been married for 20 years and there was never any form of intimacy. Oh, there was physical intimacy, but no emotional intimacy. They never let themselves open up to let this person in. Because if I let you in, you're going to see inside me, and you can see that I'm, a terrible person, which you're not. Rarely these people are. They just have been abandoned, and they're looking for this love relationship that's going to fix all their problems, which we said before is never, ever true. Okay? So what I'm going to go through right now are the 8 steps of obsession. I have found through my counseling and reading, there are levels and steps of obsession to this love obsessed. Now, all of us are going to see parts of ourselves in this, because all of us, fail and make mistakes in relationships, and that's normal and healthy. But the love obsessed really have become professionals on all 8 of these. So usually it starts with phase 1, which is love at first sight. Okay, they see the person, and there is no such thing as love at first sight. It's not lust at first sight. Yeah, plenty of that. But love at first sight, because true love comes from time, getting to know a person, and giving, as we mentioned before many, many times. So there can't be love at first sight, right? That means you've seen that person, and as a person who was abandoned as a child, who has this Prince Charming syndrome, look at this person, that's the guy or that's the girl who's going to come along and solve all my problems. I love you. Yeah, I hear your music, or I hear what you have to say, or the way you look, and you're going to come into my life and you're going to fix all my problems. Bad sign. So it usually triggers with that. People have a tendency to become obsessive with love at first sight, and you've got to be very, very cautious with this, right? Because it's not real. Number 2 is the fantasy is triggered, right? This Prince Charming, I'm now going to move into my fantasy mode, and everything is great, and you're going to do it, and I love you so much. I love being around you. When I hear couples who meet for the first time and are up all night talking to each other, I'm like, it's not going to work. And they say to me, Rabbi, I met this guy or I met this girl and we spoke all night. We have so much in common. I'm like, why are we up all night for? That's not healthy. I always think, I don't say it, but I always think to myself, and I'm right 99.9% of the time, when they say we just met and we were up all night and this is the one, it ain't going to happen. Always think that. I don't say it because I don't want to burst their bubble, or probably I should, but they get upset with me. I said it's not going to happen. If they meet, and I was like, how's the date last night? And they're like, that's okay. I'm like, ooh, we got a possibility of success, right? Because you've left some room for improvement. But if you start off at love at first sight, right, and it's all obsessive and it's all fantasy, and here comes my Prince Charming and his white steed to sweep me off my feet and fix all my problems, there's only one way from there, and that's down, right? You've made this person into for a man, right, it becomes the super female. And you ask them how they met. They're like, oh, we met, and that first night was all amazing, and they're in a relationship now, and it's usually terrible, right? Because they obviously lack something from their mothers, these men, right? Or their female caregiver. And they think that this girl is now going to fix this stuff for me, right? There's a lack of self-worth and there's no self-introspection. So the fantasy is triggered. And they don't see this person for who they truly are, but they see them as a rescuer from all the stuff they went through in their childhood, okay? And that's what they're beginning to see in this unhealthy and obsessive relationship. So that's number 2. So number 1 is love at first sight, which we said doesn't exist. Then becomes the fantasy, thinking this person's going to come into my life and fix all of my emotional holes that exist inside me, and they're going to make everything perfect for me, which is not true. It's obsessive. Number 3 is the romance stage begins. As the relationship builds, the person starts to feel valued because they're getting attention. It feels at the beginning of the relationship always feels good. They take me out and they buy me stuff and they're always calling me or texting me or Facebooking me or all the other E's, right? Constantly in touch, and you start to feel complete and full. But that's only temporary because no one can maintain that. It's not possible. People have their own lives. We have jobs, we have friends, we have families, we have other people to deal with. So no one can live up to this romance stage that you've conjured up in your life, right? This person, the person you've chosen to be your rescuer from all your problems, cannot maintain that level of commitment. The problem is the person who is victim of this fantasy can't fulfill it. And what do they eventually do is they're like, I can't handle this. I got to withdraw. But the more you withdraw, since this person is enmeshed, right, which remember is not healthy, the more they try to withdraw and like, I need breathing space, the more this person kind of hangs on to them, right, like an albatross around their necks. So you have this enmeshment, and this person says, don't leave me, don't abandon me. I was abandoned as a child by my divorced parents. I was abandoned as a child by my teacher or therapist. I was abandoned, so don't you abandon me as well. And the guy starts to go, well, get off me, or the girl will say, leave me alone, give me some space. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. We're in a relationship right now, and you ain't going anywhere. And this unhealthy relationship will last for months, or I've seen years. People turn around to me like, I've been in an unhealthy relationship for years, right? Because they couldn't extricate themselves from this unhealthy behavior, okay? Number 4, the person starts to show neediness and denies reality of being abandoned, right? Because the more neediness you show, the more the other party will back away from the relationship, right? The person will deny the fact their partner's not present for them, right? And they'll be in denial. As I always say, denial is not just a river in Egypt, right? They're in this denial relationship and they're like, no. They love me. They just don't know how much yet. And they need me. They couldn't live without me. I'm like, right now, honey, they can't wait to get out, right? But they've also got their own problems because they're the ones who got stuck with you in the first place. That didn't happen by coincidence. They chose you knowing full well somewhere subconsciously that this was even going to happen, right? Rarely are they surprised, okay? Right? So through this denial that relationship is actually in a big mess, they can avoid the agony of rejection and abandonment, right? And here are the typical comments I hear from such people. Oh, he's so busy right now, right? Because it's, it's the sales season, they're at work. A wife thinks, forgetting that he's gone left them for like weeks or months. Oh, it's just a temporary thing, right? They just had to go away on work and business. I'll see them again. Oh, he deserves to have some time with his friends at the bar after work, right? Or a parent will say about their adult son, he's been out late every night, right? If he comes home at all. So they'll make excuses as to why this person has kind of like had to pull back from them. And they'll be like, it's not me. It's some other reason that they've actually removed themselves from my life. Okay? Then eventually you become aware that their partner is abandoning them, right? And the denial crumbles. And that's when they call the rabbi and the therapist, or they're, hopefully they have someone to turn to, their family members, and be like, I can't believe it. How could this be? It becomes so obvious they find out that their husband or wife has been having an affair or is living a double life, right? Has been doing other stuff. And really, and I'm not exaggerating, these relationships become like soap operas on television, right? And they confront them at work or in the restaurant, right? Is the lipstick on their collar? And there's usually like a big showdown, shouting, screaming, and in many cases, unfortunately, violence, emotional, even physical. When the denial is broken, they feel abandoned like you did to me, or done to me as a child, right? This abandonment, which they've actually done because they had to get away from this crazy person, right? The love-obsessed person, and it all eventually crumbles. And that's when they start to call friends, or I start to get emails and phone calls at 3 a.m. because of this obsessive thing. And eventually, right? Or they'll do it silently, which is probably even worse, and they become the martyr. Now, this is a whole other syndrome we'll leave for another time, but the martyr syndrome is like, oh, okay, I'm the martyr, I deserve this. Yeah, that's what he's doing to me. Yeah, but I'm okay, right? It's all internally focused, okay? And they try to cure the situation by dressing seductively or going on vacation or moving to a new town or new neighborhood. They want to, let's start over. But as I always say, wherever you go, there you are. I'll say that again. People try to change things, right? They'll get cosmetic surgery or change their house or their clothing or their neighborhood or their friends, thinking the relationship will get better. It doesn't. Wherever you go, there you are. The problem is with you, not with the outside or even with your partner that you're obsessing over. Problems with you. Unless you change yourself, nothing changes. Okay? Number 6 is the person enters withdrawal. They pull back into themselves. They accept the fact their partners have abandoned them, and that may take years to get to this point, by the way. Painful, broken, tragic years. And they finally recognize there is something going on in the other person's life which is more important than them. And that is really heartbreaking. Their partner, who, as you realize, has been their drug up to now, has moved on and been in another relationship. And this is unless you've actually witnessed people going through this drug withdrawal, if you think withdrawal from, cocaine or crack is bad, you haven't seen the withdrawal signs of a relationship, right? It's pain, fear, anger, jealousy, emptiness, feeling overwhelmed. Literally, it's a complete breakdown. Then number 7 of our 8 of being in an obsessive relationship, one of the steps of it is the person obsesses how they can get their partner back. And they start to stalk them. We've all heard stories of stalking and people driving miles, confronting people, right? They become an obsessive planner. I'm going to get them back, right? Rarely can they, because once bitten, twice shy. So the one being obsessed over doesn't want this person in their life, but the person doesn't take this, right? Because they feel abandoned, right? They've been through that and they're enmeshed. And although now they are geographically distant, because my guy managed to put a restraining order on this girl, or the girl put on this guy, right? But they think they can get them back and bring them back into the relationship, okay? So they become obsessive planners in order to get them back. And eventually, if this cycle of 8 isn't broken, the person actually acts out on these obsessive plans, which is literally like the worst thing, and becomes a tragic breakdown in a relationship. So I've overrun my time by quite a bit. Just to summarize where we were. We said that loving relationships mean I feel good about myself, I take care about myself, I've dealt with my issues. We all have issues from our childhood. No one's happy with where their parents brought them up. Most of us love our parents, thank God. I know I do, right? But there was things in my childhood, in school, friendships, relationships, which didn't fit me. There's a little bit of gap, of void. And so we think this person's going to come along and going to solve our problems. That's what, unfortunately, a lot of relationships become, right? Whether it's a spousal relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, a work relationship, right? The guru, the therapist, the rabbi, and it takes on the guise of enmeshment. And the way we need to work on ourselves is that that's not a healthy relationship. Healthy relationships are, we're not enmeshed. Everything is not dependent upon each other. We are two separate, healthy individuals, and we're able to create our own functioning relationships. And one of the signs we said is that people taking care of themselves, physically taking care of themselves, emotionally taking care of themselves, not abandoning their own self-worth and health, that's a sign you're in a healthy love relationship and not an obsessive one. Okay, a lot more to say. We'll save that for future weeks. Thank you everyone for joining me, and hope you have an amazing and successful rest of the week. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.